Okay, good morning to everybody. So I know it's very hard to be here at 8 o'clock in the morning, the very first day, but okay, here you are. So basically I will discuss with you some of the new insights we're having on the very close links between the biology function of ecosystem, like the Amazon ecosystem, and atmospheric chemistry aspects. So basically we'll follow the route in this presentation, starting from process that links the land atmosphere, feedbacks, then global change, because of course Amazonia is suffering global change like all the other different ecosystems, and how the societal and human activities enter on this, and how this change in radiative forcing, that's a critical ingredient in the functioning of all ecosystems, and how does this feed back to the land atmosphere issues. So basically we will go through this system, and why Amazonia in particular has important feature on these kind of links. First, Amazonia is the most vigorous hydrological cycle on Earth, but there are evidence that the hydrological cycles in Amazonia is changing. We had the two most strong droughts in the last 100 years, just in 2005 and 2010. We had the two very strong floods in 2012 and 2009. So basically there are evidence that the Amazonia could be changing in response to climate change. But also Amazonia, not like any other ecosystem, has very strong links between the forest, the atmosphere, and climate, as the presentation, I hope, will make very clear. And the interfaces between the biology, physics, and chemistry is particularly strong in Amazonia. Within this context, of course, the aerosols are important into biogeochemical cycles, in radiative forcing, cloud formation, in the links between the plants and the atmosphere, CCN, ice nuclei, and many different aspects, and the aerosols are critically important for the overall functioning of the ecosystem. And also the atmospheric chemistry in terms of VOC emission from the plants itself, and how does this produces aerosols and change all the previous properties of aerosols into the ecosystem. And then the integration of biology into Earth system models, that is just in its infancy, actually have a major role in Amazonia, because it's a perfect open laboratory, as I think we will become clear. So one main feature for Amazonia, I think, is that the forest itself is the main source of water vapor to the atmosphere through evapotranspiration from the forest leaves, but also is the source of trace gas that becomes secondary organic aerosol formation, and also primary organic aerosol emissions that are responsible for the giant CCN that can initiate precipitation very efficiently, and also for the ice nuclei that makes the big and deep convective clouds. So all this goes to the atmosphere, influences the cloud condensation nuclear concentrations that are the seeds for the clouds, and feed back to the ecosystem through precipitation that is absolutely critical for the functioning of the ecosystem. But also Amazonia is not isolated from the world, from all different pressures, so we're also studying how the transition from the natural ecosystem like this goes to degraded areas that are significant in Amazonia. So basically this is the framework we are actually working with. So now going into more detail, from the biogenic emission from spores, pollen, bacteria into as a primary biological aerosol particles. They get coated by several sugars present in the atmosphere and become more soluble. They are getting more efficient as CCN, and they are more efficient to nucleate cloud droplets. So this goes to the cloud, and then there are several feedback loops. But most interesting, we also have the biogenic salts like potassium, like phosphorus, like ammonia, that are released by the plants that can feed very, very small particles and also participate in the secondary organic aerosol production, as the paper from Chris Poker recently have shown very clearly. Another way of looking to the ecosystem is what Anki Nonscher have done, looking into the total OH reactivity from the biological functioning for the forest to the atmospheric chemistry, links to the physics of the atmosphere. Of course, OH is a critical ingredient in all processes in the oxidation of most of the gaseous compound into the atmosphere through a series of reactions, some of them mediated by nitrogen compounds, and producing ozone. That's a critical ingredient in the oxidizing capacity of Amazonia. And then this, of course, influences secondary organic aerosols, clouds, and precipitation. So primary biological aerosol particles, they are everywhere in the world. They have a significant loading into the atmosphere as fungal spore emissions, especially in Amazonia, the tropical Africa, and also Southeast Asia tropical forest. But you see that the concentrations are very significant in Amazonia overall. And we are designing several experiments like the Go Amazon that Alan mentioned, but several others like Amaze, into studying the aerosol and cloud life cycles in a very integrated way, taking into account as comprehensive as possible approach to really have a full understanding of the equilibrium reactions that controls the atmosphere composition in Amazonia. And this goes through several multi-phase process. This is what makes this process pretty complex, from liquid to solid reactions in addition to the gases. And then we have emissions and deposition that are basically controlled by the biological activity and feedbacks. And this is a very, very dynamic system. The reactions can be much faster than in other regions, and also the feedbacks can be much faster. And also, in addition to the natural biological functioning of Amazonia, let's not forget us as human beings. We are present in Amazonia in a significant way. So actually, Amazonia can also be seen as a region in transition, because a lot of different activities like agricultural expansion, logging, and also global climate change influence into a series of different processes that regulates the ecosystem functioning and having several different effects that are already observed by both statistical variability into Amazonia. So the interactions between land use change and climate change is a major driver for changes in Amazonia, and this study should be integrated into the biological functioning of the forest. And in Amazonia, you have basically three types of aerosol particles: the biogenic component, both primary biological particles like this, and also secondary organic aerosols that comprise most of the aerosol number and also mass. But you also have the biomass burning component that we study along many ways. And Amazonia is not isolated from the globe, so we have dust from Sahara that's an important source for ice nuclei into Amazonia, as several of our studies have shown. So basically, each of these components have very different properties, very different impacts, and the size of these particles grows from 1 nanometers to 10 micrometers, so they go through a huge change in different scales. Amazonia have reduced, Brazil have reduced deforestation in Amazonia very significant, from 27,000 square kilometers to about 4,000 square kilometers. So this have changed dramatically the picture of the site, but sometimes in a quite unpredictable way, as we're gonna see later on in the presentation. So basically here you see 14 years of continuous aeronet measurements in Amazonia. So one of the things we see that in 2007, this is daily average, so these are not instantaneous values. Instantaneous values can go up to 5.5 or 6 in terms of AOD at 550 nanometers, so very high aerosol optical depth. But you see that the decrease in deforestation in AOD is not as high as the decrease in 6 times in deforestation rates. So basically there was a shift from deforestation irrigation fires that were predominant 10 years ago to actually pasture management fires that are predominantly over the last 4 or 5 years. But even with all this reduction, we still see significant aerosol optical depth over large areas in Amazonia. So to study these issues and to put them in a scientific context, we are operating right now in Amazonia a total of 6 different measurement sites that are operating continuously. It's not easy to operate these things in the middle of the jungle continuously for 10, 15 years, but some of the sites are very far away, like the Ato site, that we are building a tower, 320 meters tall tower, that should be ready by this December. That will be a permanent laboratory in Amazonia. But in addition to that, we have stations like the ZF2, where the amazing experiment was done, and we are doing continuous aerosol measurements since 2008. And then several different sites, urban sites, and also downwind of Manaus as part of the Go Amazon experiment. So I will present some of the data before and then after the Manaus plume. So this is the kind of laboratory we install in the middle of the jungle. It's one of our containers at ZF2. So this is an ACSM, an high-resolution AMS, PTRMS, several optical measurements, TON for aerosol mass, and so on. So we need these dedicated instruments operating over 4, 5, or 10 years to really understand the process that regulates atmospheric chemistry in Amazonia. Transport in Amazonia is also something very peculiar. So we see, for instance, these are basically 6 months backward trajectories from Manaus. So you see that you have a very persistent pathway from the tropical Atlantic into Manaus, and before reaching Manaus, the air mass travel for 2,500 kilometers of just forest, no urban center in between, no local contamination. So this makes it a perfect laboratory to study this kind of thing. And if you go the influence function for the Manaus footprint, you see that you cover a significant fraction of the Amazon forest, especially the Amazon part that is undisturbed in very natural conditions. And how is the aerosol size distribution for this pristine environment? So in the wet season, we have a predominance of coarse mold particles. This is about 7 to 8 micrograms per cubic meter. Most of them primary biological particle. A small fraction is mineral dust, most of it transported from Sahara into Amazonia. And in the fine mold, we have the secondary organic aerosol dominates about 75 to 8% of the fine mold mass. So basically, you see from the aerosol composition and size distribution that actually the role of biology is very important into the aerosol composition and size. If you look into long term, this is 4 years of aerosol mass concentration north of Manaus in a pristine area. You see that during the dry season, you'll see the regular increase, slight increase, not as dramatic as you see in southern part of Amazonia, but we also see a constant coarse mold particles that are mostly biogenic, as I mentioned, 7 to 10 microgram per cubic meter. And this is black carbon, mostly in the fine particles, as you can see here, through the 4-year cycle, but also we have absorption by these coarse mold particles that is very significant in Amazonia. These coarse mold particles is mostly consisted of primary biological aerosol particles, and most of these particles fluorescence on the UV type of analysis, and the size distribution is centered about 2.5 micrometers, so by several different studies. And if you do analysis with a wide-use bioaerosol sensor, WIBES-3. So basically, you see this is a diurnal variability. You see that most of the particles are really actually released at nighttime as part of nighttime biological process. So basically you see that the fluorescence particles, in terms of concentration and time of the day, they predominate during nighttime. They are very much reduced by factor of 5 during daytime, and then as soon as the sun goes down, it goes back. The non-fluorescence coarse mode particles has a relatively constant concentration. See, this is again an evidence of the relevance of primary biological particles into this particular ecosystem. And on the fine mode, most of the particles came as a secondary organic aerosol from the oxidation of VOCs, in particular isoprene and monoterpenes. Isoprene through 3 different heights into the forest. They peak at 1 o'clock. Monoterpenes peaks later at 5 o'clock for all the different levels. But we see enhanced concentration at the canopy level, and there is much more detail on this kind of measurement to the poster of Ana Maria Serrano there. So you see that during the dry season and the wet season, the vertical profile is associated with biogenic emissions with slightly higher dry season concentration than in the wet season. And one of the issues in Amazonia is that we do not observe on the ground, or very rarely, to be more precise, new particle formation, and it's still a question why we don't observe new particle formation, as you see in boreal forest, in a very frequent way. So basically, possibly because we have very low SO2 concentration, so concentration of sulfuric acid in the atmosphere is pretty low, and also the organic concentration, the materials, it's very, very difficult for them to go to a stable cluster where they could form newly formed nanometer-sized particles. But another hypothesis is that these particles are not formed on the ground, but they are formed on the free troposphere, and through downdraft they could come down, already grow it up. But last week measurements in the Go Amazon to the German haloplane and the DOE also went up to 15 kilometers, and we did not find these particles there also. So basically still remain a mystery how these particles are formed. What we observe, that is a relatively weird kind of characteristics, is this kind of nighttime burst of 20 to 40 nanometers particle that show up quickly, and then for 1 hour or 2 hours they just disappear. We don't see this banana as you see in Rutiala. So basically the nature of this kind of event is still unknown. But what we know is that, for instance, they are very frequent. So this is daily size distribution. Sometimes they appear a little bit higher in size, 40 nanometers. But you see that if you take into the frequency of these events, this is the percentage of particles with diameter from 10 to 40 nanometers, measuring over 3 years in the Amaze site. So basically, sometimes you see for the wet season, they can account for 40 to 50% in terms of frequency. So they are very frequent, that happens frequently, and we really don't know why, the nature of these particles. Another curiosity of the Amazonian of the Amazonian aerosol, maybe is a peculiarity of these particles, is that even very, very small, 20 to 40 nanometers secondary organic aerosol particles were measured as containing small amounts of potassium in 95% of the particles. So they are not pure organic particles, but they have very, very, very small amounts of potassium that, of course, came from the vegetation itself. So actually, to show the process that could make this potassium produce organic aerosol is also a critical area that we still do not understand pretty well. In terms of aerosol size distribution in general, so basically this is an aeronet size distribution very similar to ground-based SNPS. You see the secondary organic aerosol in the fine mode for the wet season, and then you see the primary biological particles. And in the dry season, we see an enhanced fine particles because of the biomass burning contribution, and a similar mode for the primary biological particles as same features we see into the filters. When you look into this size distribution in very much detail, you see there's a function, as a function of time, we'll see changes from the Aitken mode to the accumulation mode as we go over the day during the wet season, and we see quite significant cloud-processed particles in the wet season that we don't see during the dry season. Look that the scales are very, very much different into the dry sea, just to see the transport of aged biomass burning particles. And as a function of local time, we see that the particles do increase, especially in the wet season, the average particle size, so they are subjected to photochemistry process. In terms of optical properties, there are some interesting features. Also, this is light scattering measured over 5 years in that site, and this is light absorption. So basically, you see an enhancement during the dry season due to the biomass burning, but in terms of absorption, we also see here in February and March an enhancement of absorption, possibly due to the long-range transport of biomass burning from Africa that brings together with the Sahara dust into Amazonia this type of aerosol, and also some absorption due also to the dust itself. So curiously, if you look into single scattering albedo, you see that the single scattering albedo over the wet season, sporadically when these kind of events happen, they decrease the single scattering albedo very much comparing to the dry season that you have a single scattering albedo of 0.90 to 0.92. So a pretty scattering aerosol due to the presence of organic particles. If you look into the large scale picture, as we are running several stations, we can compare analysis of two sites 100 kilometers apart, that is the Ato site versus the TT34 site, the ZF2 site. You see a remarkable similarities between the concentration for the two sites. So basically meaning that this is not the locally produced aerosol, so actually this responds to the local, to the large area forcing, and the particle scattering is the same picture as the particle absorption. So basically also in terms of organic composition of aerosol, we'll see of 81% of wet season aerosol is dominated by organic particles, very small sulfate, 8.6%, and very small, even small nitrate concentrations. And most of the aerosol is highly oxidized, so this means it's an aged aerosol that has suffered quite significant oxidation process for both the ZF2 and also for the Ato site. And how is the link between these features and the hydrological cycle? So basically you have evidence that the hydrological cycle is intensified, so as a response for tropical Atlantic sea surface temperature. And the issue is, how does this links with the cloud property? So basically it's also important to understand that Amazonia is critically important into the transport process from water vapor here to the food production area of North Argentina and also southern Brazil. And Ilan Correa a few years ago showed very nice features of the effects of aerosols, both on cloud trough pressures and also on cloud diffraction, where cloud diffraction, if you add a little bit of aerosol, can change from 25% up to 60% because there are plenty of water vapor and they are depleted in terms of aerosol particles. But very non-linear process, because as you increase the amount of aerosols, the droplets start to evaporate, and then this is extremely difficult to model into the global model. And how is the effect effect of the particles in Amazonia into the water cycle down in South America. So recently, Maria Assunção have done a paper where she compared the aerosol optical depth in several sites in Amazonia, and actually rainfall rate measured by TRIM in the La Plata Basin, and they saw a significant reduction in precipitation in the La Plata Basin associated with biomass burning aerosols in Amazonia. I will start skipping some of the transparencies. So basically this is show also the relevance of aerosol from both biogenic and also soil dust as an ice nuclei that are critically important for the formation of deep convective clouds in Amazonia. These aerosol particles also have very important effects and impacts on the radiation balance. Recent work from Elisa Sena showed that the direct radiative force of aerosols in Amazonia over large areas can reach average of -12 watts per square meter, average for the whole dry season. So it's a very significant radiative force. If you take into account the effect of CO2 is about 2.6 watts per square meter. And this, in addition to the aerosols, also land use change the radiative forcing strongly. Also water vapor effects change the radiative forcing. And there is a poster here from Elisa discussing how we have integrated the biospheric components, aerosols and water vapor. And then just to finish, in the end, you know, this radiation meets photosynthesis through the several different processes. And then there are several feedback loops into the diffusion global radiation. And we have observed very strong effects of aerosol loading into the atmosphere into net ecosystem exchange. So this is affecting the photosynthetic rate of the forest very, very significantly. And then we are just finishing the Go Amazon project. So basically it's looking to the effect of urban area like Manaus, downwind. How does this affect the atmospheric chemistry and aerosols? These are the results of more than 120 different flight patterns that flew from Manaus, downwind of Manaus, with the 3 different airplanes. So right now, this week, you have the German HALO airplane flying there, also the DOE G1 plane, and last year we had the BA-146 just to analyze the large-scale aerosol and trace gases in Amazonia. So this is the pattern that you flew over with the G1 in one of the flights in March 16, and this is CPC counts from Manaus City over the T2 sites that were operating, that is downwind from the city. You see a huge increase in CPC, and they are getting diluted over the area. But you also see interesting gradients in terms of isoprene concentrations, high concentrations over pristine forest area, and isoprene actually being reacted with the products from the Manaus area and producing many different compounds. We see toluene also as a tracer for urban emission from Manaus, but you see production of acetone, we see production of MVK, and the ratio between them varies a lot with the different isoprene and the concentration. So the kinetics is very complex. This is what we are trying to study. And the flight of March 17, for instance, this is the flight pattern, also show this is Manaus and this is downwind of Manaus, this is Manacapuru, also show very clearly the effects of aerosols on the Manaus plume, and again, a similar picture, isoprene being consumed down here and with high concentration outside the Manaus plume and low concentration into the plume. So basically this just shows us that the biological, the chemical, and the physical processes are extremely tied into Amazonia, and they form a pretty complex system that are now just starting to understand. And also, I will direct you to about 45 papers with additional results over the conference for many students and other researchers into the project. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Paulo. we have time for a couple of questions. We've got someone walking around with a mic, so if you have a question, please raise your hand really high, and she'll bring you the microphone right there.
Again, thank you for a very interesting talk. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the plot that showed the response of NEE, net ecosystem exchange, to radiation? Was that response species dependent, or was it simply a function of the total flux coming into the canopy?
No, it's a function actually of the ratio between diffuse and direct irradiation. So we find out that photosynthesis is very much sensitive on this ratio. Of course, also you have effects of temperature, you also effects of relative humidity, but the most important factor is the increase in diffuse radiation due to the loading of the aerosols. And surprisingly, the photosynthesis for some of the LBA towers measuring over 10 years of average can change between 23% to 45% enhanced photosynthesis, enhanced carbon uptake. So it's a very strong numbers, so that meaning that the aerosols has a very important impact in the carbon cycle in Amazonia.
Thank you. We'll take one more question for Paulo. I see one right there.
You mentioned that over the forest, the biological particles have a maximum during the night. Is that because the forest is most active in producing them during the night, or is it related to the boundary layer?
No, it's not related to the boundary layer, because we see the enhancement mostly at ground below the canopy. So basically it's actually a nighttime activity of fungus that release spores, and they are also reaching phosphorus very curiously, you know. You see an enhancement of 10 times at nighttime in phosphorus up below the canopy that we don't see above the canopy. And phosphorus is the limiting nutrient for Amazonia. So it's curious why the forest, the microorganism will release such important element at nighttime. And mostly they do that to avoid the daytime convection, to avoid losing this phosphorus, you know, to the outside ecosystem. So this is could be a way of evolution to preserve the nutrient cycle inside the Amazonia, but this is a feature that we still do not understand properly.
Thank you very much, Paulo, for an excellent talk and for opening